Thank you, Chairman Graham. Thank you, Secretary Tillerson, for your service and the chance to be with you again today. I'm struck at the list that the chairman put up and the detailed and thorough presentation he made about the unsettled and dangerous and difficult world in which we currently operate, and the gap with your written presentation and spoken presentation. I see here Russian aggression and conflict in Ukraine relatively prominent, and I did not see that in your written testimony or your spoken testimony, and I'm concerned about that gap in the context of an era when we know that Russia, from the very highest levels, intentionally interfered in our last presidential elections. And in my view, that's only going to stop when we stop it. And I understand we may have a difference of approach to how to engage Vladimir Putin in Russia, but I have a concern about the message we're sending to our vital allies. I am haunted by a question asked of me by an Eastern European diplomat at the Halifax Security Forum not long after the inauguration, where he said, "How can we count on you to defend our democracy when we don't see you defending your own democracy?" In your confirmation hearing, you acknowledged Russia's ongoing efforts to divide Europe from the United States and to divide NATO and the EU within. And we discussed how you would lead the resources of the State Department to counter Russian propaganda through tools like Radio Free Europe, and how you would invest in strengthening our vital allies in the region, whether NATO or, as has been mentioned, countries like Georgia or Ukraine that are not NATO members. If I understand this right, your FY18 request for Europe and Eurasia is nearly cut in half from FY16 by about $450 million. What is the strategy behind decreasing support for our partners and allies in the region in the face of a clear and growing Russian threat to their democracies and ours?
Well, first, let me position the situation with Russia for you so that you understand what I am hearing from allies, partners, large and small. And this is without exception. I have yet to have a bilateral, a one-on-one, a pull-aside with a single counterpart in any country in Europe, the Middle East, even Southeast Asia that has not said to me, please address your relationship with Russia. It has to be improved. They believe worsening this relationship will ultimately worsen their situation. So people have been imploring me to engage and try to improve the situation. So now that was our approach anyway, but I would just tell you the feedback I'm getting is please engage and see if you can improve the situation. With respect to the tools available to us, we do maintain particular emphasis on the countries that we see in Europe that are most at risk of Russian interference in Eastern Europe. We would like to do more in the Baltics and in the Balkans. If we had a little more, we'd do a little more there, but we've not walked away from those. We do want to continue to perfect more sophisticated approaches as to how to push messages into Russian society, obviously through social media, through broadcast, through all of the tools available to us, and we are going to continue to maintain that effort to ensure we are in the conversation among young people and others inside of Russia. But this, I understand other countries are concerned about Russia. They should be. And I hear about it when I talk to them about how they feel the direct threat, whether they're in the Baltics, whether they're in the Balkans, whether they're in Georgia, or whether they're in other parts of the world as well. So they express that to me, but then when we talk about what should be done, they want us to solve it through engagement. They do not want it to get worse, because if it gets worse, they fear it will be worse for them.
Well, Mr. Secretary, I appreciate hearing that perspective, and we have many of the same conversations, just with a different endpoint. Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, in the North Atlantic Alliance, I hear grave concerns that the signals we are sending are signals of retreat and of disengagement. Partly this is from countries, as was mentioned by the chairman, a country like Jordan that critically depends on us for support as they bear the burden and costs of a great number of refugees. In other places, it's where either China is being ascendant or aggressive in the South China Sea or in the face of North Korea, or in Eastern Europe, as you mentioned. In terms of an overall budget that is trying to defend American interests and advance American values, I don't see how it makes sense in an increasingly difficult and contested world to unilaterally withdraw support from vital allies who have chosen us and our values and our side in a contest of ideas with Russia, China, and others. Let me mention two other things before I run out of time. As has been mentioned by others, we have people-to-people programs like the Fulbright scholarships that have had a big positive impact and that elevate the reputation we enjoy in the world. Africa is a very young continent, a very large continent where China's omnipresent. The Young African Leaders Initiative is a relatively modest in-scope program that has had a big impact. I thought it was, again, not the choice I would have made to cut all the educational and cultural exchange programs in half, and YALI would be one of them. I hope you will reconsider that because I think these are powerful programs that connect us to parts of the world where we benefit from a positive relationship and from, as you said, that next generation of leaders. Power Africa is also something that we, on a bipartisan basis, authorized through the Electrify Africa Act. It is a way for us to bring the deployment of private sector capital and American expertise to sub-Saharan Africa. Your budget proposal allocates an 84% cut from the FY16 enacted level for this. There are a dozen other programs I could talk about that I think reduce the visibility and the scope and the reach of our investment through diplomacy and development. Those are two I just wanted to elevate in our conversation today. Let me close just by quoting an editorial that I thought made an important point. A senator said in this editorial, "To view foreign policy as simply transactional is more dangerous than its proponents realize. Depriving the oppressed of a beacon of hope could lose us the world we have built and thrived in." This is, of course, by Senator McCain. It was written on May 8th. I'd ask for unanimous consent to be submitted for the record. I am concerned that in a world that is increasingly unstable and where there is a clear contest between authoritarian capitalism and real capitalism, a democracy that is a capitalist society, that we need to step up our game. And I agree with increasing our defense investment, but I think to do it without also sustaining or increasing our investment in diplomacy and development is ill-considered. And I really hope that we will work together to advance human rights, to advance diplomacy, and to advance development through this budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.